"We don't serve people like you." The restaurant buzzed with the low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. It was a popular downtown Los Angeles spot, known for its exclusivity and upscale clientele. Soft jazz music played from hidden speakers, blending with the aroma of fresh herbs and sizzling delicacies. The wooden floors gleamed under warm lighting, and the neatly dressed servers floated between tables with practiced grace. Through the revolving doors stepped a man who looked utterly out of place. Keanu Reeves, but not the Keanu people expected. Gone were the designer suits and polished shoes. Instead, he wore a faded gray hoodie, a worn baseball cap pulled low over his forehead, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. His backpack hung loosely from one shoulder. He walked with quiet confidence, his dark eyes scanning the restaurant not with arrogance, but with a gentle patience. He was just a man seeking a simple meal. Linda, the hostess, noticed him immediately. She was young, sharp-tongued, and prided herself on maintaining the restaurant's standards. Her eyes flicked up from the reservation book to Keanu's casual appearance. A cold smirk played on her lips. The moment Keanu reached the hostess stand, the atmosphere shifted. Linda's voice rang out loud enough for nearby patrons to hear. "Sir, this isn't the place for people like you." The words hit like a slap. Keanu paused, his face calm but inscrutable. He lowered his eyes and said quietly, "I'm just here for dinner." Linda's smirk deepened. Eyes scanning the tables filled with well-dressed customers who quickly turned their heads, some smiling awkwardly, others whispering, "We don't serve people who look like you here." She glanced pointedly at his worn clothes and backpack, her tone dripping with disdain. "Maybe try somewhere else." A murmur spread through the crowd. A middle-aged couple near the entrance exchanged looks, their faces twisted in a mixture of surprise and disapproval. "What is this?" the man muttered. "Some kind of joke." The woman whispered. Keanu remained still, his posture relaxed, almost meditative. There was no anger in his eyes, only a quiet dignity. His voice was low but steady. "I'm not here to cause trouble." Miguel, a young waiter who had been watching from the sidelines, felt a knot tighten in his chest. He was a kind-hearted Latino man in his early 20s, someone who believed everyone deserved respect regardless of their appearance or background. He stepped forward cautiously. "Maybe we can find a table for you," Miguel suggested softly, hoping to diffuse the situation. Linda shot him a sharp glare. "Miguel, don't embarrass me." Miguel bit his lip and retreated, but his eyes didn't leave Keanu. There was something about the man's quiet strength that unsettled him, in a way that made him want to stand up for him. The restaurant's patrons whispered among themselves. A young woman with designer glasses whispered to her friend, "Is he homeless or something?" An older businessman shook his head and muttered, "This is ridiculous. How did he even get in here?" Keanu's gaze drifted slowly across the room, taking in the hostile faces, yet he said nothing more. His calmness only seemed to deepen the unease. Linda crossed her arms, ready to close the case. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Keanu nodded slowly, stepping back toward the door. The soft shuffle of his sneakers against the polished floor was almost inaudible beneath the restaurant's clamor. Just before he reached the exit, Miguel's eyes locked onto something familiar in Keanu's face, a flicker of recognition. He whispered under his breath, "No way. Could it be him?" The door swung closed behind Keanu, muffling the outside sounds. On the street, the city's noise enveloped him. Cars honked, people chatted, and somewhere nearby, a siren wailed. Keanu paused on the sidewalk, exhaling slowly, the weight of rejection evident but not crushing. Back inside, Linda basked in what she thought was victory. A few patrons offered approving nods. Others whispered their agreement. But Miguel's mind raced. He pulled out his phone, fingers trembling as he searched for recent photos of Keanu Reeves, casual, unguarded pictures taken by fans in parks or cafes. The images popped up instantly, comparing them side by side. His breath caught. The man who had just been kicked out was unmistakably the Hollywood star himself. "What have we done?" Miguel murmured, his voice barely audible in the corner, a security camera recorded the last moments inside the restaurant. The lens captured Keanu's face as he left, calm, dignified, eyes filled with quiet strength and anger. Not bitterness, but a resilience forged from years of hardship and grace. The screen fades out on Miguel's troubled expression, the tension in the air palpable. The question lingers: who really deserves to be here? The air inside the restaurant thickened after Keanu's quiet exit. The warm hum of polite conversation was replaced by whispers and uneasy glances. The once inviting space now felt charged, as if a storm was gathering behind the polished walls. Linda, the hostess, straightened her posture, a satisfied smirk still lingering on her lips. She believed she had done her job, protecting the restaurant's reputation from an unwelcome presence. But not everyone agreed. Miguel stood behind the bar, his heart pounding. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong with how they had treated the man. He kept replaying the scene in his mind, the calmness in Keanu's eyes, the dignity, despite the harsh rejection. Then something unexpected happened. From across the room, a middle-aged woman stumbled. She was carrying a tray stacked with delicate glasses of red wine. Her foot caught on the edge of a carpet, and the glasses wobbled dangerously. Without hesitation, Keanu, still lingering just outside the door, stepped forward. Reaching out to steady the tray through the open window, the restaurant fell silent for a moment as the woman regained her balance. Miguel's eyes widened. No one else had moved to help. Linda noticed too. Her expression darkened. But before she could say anything, Keanu smiled softly and said, "Careful. These are precious." The woman nodded, grateful and surprised. Then, Miguel did something that surprised even himself. He walked toward the door. "Sir," Miguel said quietly, "please come back inside. You're welcome here." Linda's eyes narrowed. "Miguel, what are you doing? Get back to work." Miguel hesitated, but ignored her. "No one should be treated like that." Linda's voice rose, harsh and commanding. "Miguel, if you don't stop, you're fired. Do you understand?" The whole restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Miguel looked at Keanu, then back to Linda. "I understand, but some things aren't." "Right." Keanu gave Miguel a thankful nod, but said nothing. The tension was palpable. Other customers began to whisper louder. Some rolled their eyes. Others looked uncomfortable. A young man at the bar muttered, "What's going on here? This is supposed to be a classy place." A woman sitting near the window whispered to her friend, "Why are they making such a fuss over a guy like him?" Miguel clenched his fists but kept his voice steady. "Because kindness isn't about who you are, it's about what you do." Linda's glare was sharp. "Enough. You'll regret this." Miguel turned to Keanu, who smiled faintly. "Thank you," Keanu said softly. "Kindness goes a long way." Suddenly, a child sitting near the entrance tugged on Miguel's sleeve. "Why is that man outside? Is he bad?" Miguel knelt down and looked into the child's curious eyes. "No, he's not bad. Sometimes, people make mistakes and don't see what's really important." The child nodded slowly, then looked toward the door where Keanu had disappeared. Meanwhile, Linda's voice cut through the murmur again. "Everyone, please focus on your meals. This is a restaurant, not a charity." Her words were met with mixed reactions. Some customers nodded in agreement. Others glanced away, uneasy. Miguel's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screener text from a coworker outside. "Did you see the guy who got kicked out? Something feels off." About this, Miguel's mind raced. He wanted to do more, but feared losing his job. Back outside, Keanu leaned against the building, watching the scene through the glass door. His face was calm, but inside, a storm brewed. He knew the world could be cruel, but moments like this reminded him why he stayed humble and kind. His silence was a shield against the harshness, a quiet resistance. As he stood there, a small bird fluttered nearby, chirping softly. Keanu smiled a tiny gesture of hope. Inside, the manager appeared suddenly, his face stern. "Miguel, this ends now. You're on thin ice." Miguel swallowed hard, but didn't back down. "I'm just doing what feels right." The manager shook his head. Right or wrong doesn't matter here. You either follow the rules, or you don't work here. Asterisk, a hush fell over the room. Keanu's eyes met Miguel's once more. In that glance was a silent promise not of revenge, but of recognition and gratitude. Then, Miguel turned and walked back to his station. The restaurant slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But the atmosphere had changed. People whispered about the incident, some shaking their heads, others frowning. One customer murmured that man, he didn't deserve that. Another said quietly, there's something different about him. I just can't place it. Miguel caught the phrase and nodded to himself. As the night wore on, the tension simmered beneath the surface. Keanu's quiet kindness had stirred something invisible but powerful, a question of justice and empathy. The last scene of the night was a close-up on Miguel's hand holding a small piece of paper Keanu had left behind. Written on it were simple words, "Kindness is never wasted." Miguel folded the note carefully, slipping it into his pocket. Asterisk, asterisk. The camera lingers on his thoughtful face as the screen fades to black. Asterisk, the cold wind swept through the city streets as Keanu walked away from the restaurant. His footsteps, slow but steady. The rejection still hung in the air, but inside, memories. Stirred memories that shaped who he was and why he carried himself with such quiet strength that as he moved past the flickering streetlights, the scene shifted. The noise of the city faded, replaced by the gentle sounds of a small, humble home nestled on the edge of a quiet Hawaiian neighborhood. A young boy, no older than 10, sat cross-legged on a worn wooden floor. His dark hair was tousled, and his eyes shone with curiosity and wonder. This was Keanu, years before the cameras and the fame. His grandmother, a wise and gentle woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, sat nearby, holding a small book of stories. She looked at him with warmth and kindness. "Remember, Keanu," she said softly, "kindness is a choice, even when the world isn't kind back." Young Keanu nodded, clutching a simple wooden cross she had given him. It was old, weathered, but to him, it held meaning beyond words. The room was modest, but full of love. A small wooden table bore photos of family, faded yet treasured. Outside, palm trees swayed gently, the sun casting golden light through the windows. His grandmother's voice continued, "Life will test you. People may judge you by how you look, or where you come from. But your heart, your kindness, that is what matters." The boy listened intently. He had seen hardship early in life. His mother worked long hours cleaning hotel rooms, often tired and worn. His father was absent, leaving the family to fend for themselves. Keanu remembered the nights when money was tight and food scarce. He learned young that humility wasn't a weakness. It was survival. But even in hardship, his grandmother's lessons planted seeds of hope. One afternoon, Keanu and a close friend played in the dusty streets. The friend's laughter faded suddenly, replaced by silence. Later, Keanu would learn his friend had fallen into a dangerous path, lost to addiction. That loss left a scar. A quiet promise within Keanu to live differently. Back in the present, Keanu paused beneath a street lamp. He touched the wooden cross hanging from his neck, the same one from his childhood. It was a symbol of everything he had endured and everything he hoped to be. A flash of memory came the last time he spoke with his grandmother before she passed. Her voice, barely a whisper, "Always be kind, even when it's hard." Keanu exhaled slowly, the weight of the night settling on his shoulders. He understood now more than ever why kindness mattered, not for reward or recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Turning his gaze to the distant lights of the city, he felt a resolve strengthening inside. At that moment, Miguel sat alone in the restaurant's dimly lit break room. He unfolded the small note Keanu had left behind. The words "kindness is never wasted" burned bright in his mind. Miguel thought about the man outside, the calm, unshakable dignity, despite the unfair treatment. He wondered about the stories behind those quiet eyes. He pulled out his phone and searched deeper. Interviews, old footage, articles, everything painted a picture of a man unlike most in Hollywood. Humble, generous, thoughtful. Miguel smiled softly. There's more to him than meets the eye. The manager knocked on the door, breaking Miguel's thoughts. Get back out there. Don't let this distraction get in your head. Miguel nodded, but the seed of empathy had already been planted. Back on the street, Keanu's phone buzzed. A message from an old friend popped up. Stay strong. The world doesn't always see what it should. Keanu typed back a simple reply, trying. One step at a time. He looked up at the night sky stars, twinkling faintly behind the city's glow. He remembered a promise he once made, to live with humility and grace, no matter what obstacles came. The memory was vivid. A younger Keanu, sitting in a church pew, listening as a mentor spoke about forgiveness and compassion. Those lessons became his guide. The restaurant incident was just one moment in a lifetime of challenges, but it also reminded him of why he never gave up on kindness. Suddenly, footsteps approached. Miguel emerged from the shadows, carrying a warm cup of coffee. Thought you might need this, Miguel said softly. Keanu accepted it with a nod. They stood side by side, two strangers connected by something deeper than fame or circumstance. Miguel looked at him curiously. Why stay kind, even when people treat you badly? Keanu smiled faintly. Because kindness is a promise I made long ago. To someone who believed in me when no one else did. Miguel's eyes widened, but he said nothing. Instead, he took a sip of the coffee. The warmth grounding him. They stood together quietly. A moment of understanding passing between them. Inside the restaurant, Linda paced nervously. Her confident facade was starting to crack under the weight of what had happened. Her mind raced. She had followed protocol, she told herself, but the unease nagged at her. Outside, the city continued, unaware of the quiet storm brewing. For Keanu, it was another night to carry the lessons of his past and the hope for a kinder future. And for Miguel, it was the beginning of a journey, one where simple acts of courage and empathy could change lives. As the first light of dawn peeked over the horizon, both men faced a new day. One with new challenges, but also new possibilities, because sometimes the quietest stories hold the loudest truths. The morning sun peeked through the blinds of the restaurant's staff room, casting thin lines of light across Miguel's tired face. The previous night's events had settled deep in his mind like a stone, heavy and insistent. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the calm figure of Keanu Reeves, the man who had been rejected and humiliated simply for his appearance. Miguel knew he couldn't just stand by. The day began as usual, but with an undercurrent of tension running through the air. The staff whispered behind closed doors, sharing their opinions about the incident. Some criticized Miguel for stirring trouble, while others quietly admired his courage. During the lunch rush, Miguel was assigned to serve a busy section near the entrance. As he walked by the tables, he noticed the lingering looks from customers who had heard about the night before. Some were curious, others judgmental. Suddenly, through the swinging doors, a familiar figure appeared. Keanu Reeves. This time, he wore a clean jacket, simple but neat, and carried no backpack. His expression was calm, almost serene. He stepped inside quietly, nodding at Miguel in thanks. Miguel quickly moved to greet him. Welcome back. Let me get you a table. Keanu smiled softly. Thank you. But before Miguel could guide him, Linda appeared, her face stormy. What are you doing, letting him back in here? She snapped. Miguel straightened his back. He's a customer. We should treat him with respect. Linda's eyes narrowed. You're treading on thin ice, Miguel. This isn't about respect, it's about rules. Keanu stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. I came here because I believe everyone deserves kindness. No matter where they come from, Linda scoffed. Well, kindness won't pay the bills. The tension thickened. Some customers glanced nervously, sensing the brewing conflict. Miguel stood beside Keanu, feeling both fear and determination. Maybe kindness is exactly what this place needs. Linda's glare cut through the room. Enough. If you can't follow the rules, maybe this isn't the job for you. As the argument unfolded, a small voice interrupted. A little girl at a nearby table tugged on her mother's sleeve and whispered loudly enough for all to hear. "Why is that man being treated so badly? He looks nice." Heads turned. The mother shushed her quickly, embarrassed. But the question hung in the air. Miguel looked down at the girl, then back at Linda. The innocence in that child's question was impossible to ignore. Linda's face hardened. "This conversation is over." She turned sharply and walked away, leaving a silence behind her. Miguel felt the weight of the moment. He took a deep breath and turned to Keanu. "I'm sorry. This place, it's not always kind, but I believe it can change." Keanu nodded. "Thank you, Miguel. Your kindness means more than you know." But just as hope flickered, the restaurant manager appeared. His expression was grave. "Miguel, a word please." Miguel followed him to a quiet corner. The manager's voice was low but firm. "We've received complaints about your behavior. You're putting your job at risk." Miguel swallowed hard. "I'm only trying to do what's right." The manager shook his head. "Sometimes, doing what's right isn't enough here. You need to decide where you stand." Back at Keanu's table, a young waiter approached, eyes wary. "Sir, can I get you anything else?" Keanu smiled. "Just a glass of water, thank you." The waiter hesitated, then added quietly, "You have people on your side. More than you realize." Keanu's eyes softened. "That means a lot." As the lunch crowd settled, Miguel returned to his station. The manager's warning heavy on his heart. But something had changed, not just in the restaurant, but in Miguel himself. Later that day, as Miguel wiped down tables, a coworker approached. Quietly, "I heard what happened last night. You stood up for him. That was brave." Miguel smiled faintly. "Sometimes, it's the only thing you can do." Meanwhile, outside the restaurant, a news crew filmed the entrance. A local reporter's voice could be heard through the microphone. Asterisk. Last night, a man believed to be Keanu Reeves was refused service at this popular eatery. The incident has sparked outrage and discussions about kindness and judgment in our community. Inside, Miguel watched the footage on his phone, feeling both pride and fear. Pride in standing up for what was right, fear of what might come next. The camera cut back to Keanu, who spoke calmly into the lens. "Kindness is simple. It doesn't cost anything, but its value is priceless." The message resonated far beyond the screen. Back in the restaurant, Linda's cold demeanor began to soften as customers whispered about the story, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding in agreement. Miguel caught Keanu's eye again across the room. The silent exchange was full of gratitude and unspoken understanding, but the tension was far from over. That evening, Miguel was called into the manager's office. "Consider this your final warning," the manager said sternly. "One more incident, and you're out." Miguel nodded slowly. He knew the path ahead would be difficult. Outside, the city lights twinkled like distant stars. Keanu stood quietly by the curb, watching the world move around him. He thought of his grandmother's words, the lessons of kindness, and the promise he had made long ago. The night air was cool, but his heart burned with a quiet fire because sometimes it only takes one person's kindness to change everything. The evening air was thick with anticipation. Inside the restaurant, a quiet tension buzzed, far different from the usual clinking of glasses and chatter of diners. Word had spread quickly. The man who had been kicked out, then welcomed back, despite protests, was no ordinary customer. Miguel wiped down a table near the entrance when a woman's voice broke through the murmurs. "Wait, that's Keanu Reeves, isn't it?" A hush fell over the room as heads turned, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The news spread like wildfire. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, others whispered excitedly. Linda, standing near the hostess stand, froze. Her confident smirk faded, replaced by a flush of embarrassment and something closer to fear. She looked toward the door where Keanu sat quietly, his posture unchanging. Miguel caught her gaze and held it steady. "This is the man we treated so badly," he said softly. Linda opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she clenched her fists at her sides. Suddenly, a young waiter approached Keanu nervously. "Mr. Reeves, I'm so sorry for what happened." Keanu's expression softened but remained calm. "Thank you," he said quietly. From somewhere, in the crowd, a middle-aged man shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe I judged him so quickly." A woman near the bar whispered, eyes shimmering with tears. "He stayed calm the whole time." "That's real strength." Keanu looked around the room, his eyes meeting those of the many strangers who now saw him differently. No longer just a simple man in worn clothes, but a person deserving of respect. Linda finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't know, I thought." Keanu raised a hand gently, cutting her off. "It's okay. What matters now is what we do next." The room grew silent again, hanging on his words. Keanu continued, voice steady but filled with quiet passion. "I could respond with anger or resentment, but that would change nothing. Instead, I choose compassion, because kindness is the only way forward." The crowd began to soften, some nodding slowly, others wiping away tears. Miguel felt a swell of pride. The man he had stood up for was showing everyone what true strength looked like. From the back of the room, a young woman spoke up. "Thank you for showing us how to be better." Keanu smiled gently. "Thank you for listening." Linda stepped forward, her face flushed with shame and regret. "I'm sorry for my actions, I was wrong," Keanu nodded. "Apologies are a start. Now let's build something better together." The atmosphere shifted, the tension breaking like waves against the shore. Outside the restaurant, a small crowd had gathered, some holding phones, recording the moment. The story was spreading fast. One person's kindness in the face of injustice. A passerby whispered, "If only more people acted like him." Back inside, the manager approached Miguel quietly. "You did good today. Don't let this change you." Miguel smiled, feeling hope rekindle. Keanu stood and looked around the room one last time. "Remember," he said softly, "kindness isn't about recognition, it's about the heart." With that, he quietly left the restaurant, disappearing into the night, leaving behind a room full of changed hearts. The next morning, the city woke to a story that spread like wildfire. News outlets and social media platforms were buzzing with a video clip from the restaurant. Keanu Reeves being kicked out for his simple appearance, then returning with quiet grace. The footage captured every moment. The initial rejection, Miguel's brave stand, and the big reveal at the restaurant. Miguel arrived early, his phone already alive with notifications. Messages poured in, some from strangers praising his courage, others from friends expressing shock at what had happened. He sat in the small break room, scrolling through the comments. One message stood out. "You did the right thing. Kindness, like yours, is rare." Miguel smiled, feeling the weight of those words. He thought about the risks he'd taken, his job on the line, and the hope that maybe this was the start of something bigger. Outside, the restaurant was no longer just a place to eat, it had become a symbol. A local news crew set up their cameras in front of the entrance. Reporters interviewed Miguel, customers, and even the hostess, Linda, who had been forced to address the backlash. Linda's expression was guarded, her voice measured. "I regret how things were handled. This incident has been a wake-up call for all of us." Miguel listened quietly, feeling a mix of satisfaction and caution. The restaurant had to change, but people's minds took time to shift. Meanwhile, the man with the kind heart, Keanu, was away from the spotlight. Watching the world's reaction unfold on his phone, he saw headlines praising humility and calling out judgment. He read stories of people inspired by his calm, and even some critics who doubted the narrative. But Keanu remained silent. Observing back inside the restaurant, the staff dynamic was shifting. Miguel noticed a subtle change. Colleagues who had been indifferent before now greeted him with respect. A waitress approached him one afternoon. "Thanks for standing up yesterday. You gave us all a lesson. Miguel nodded. We all have a choice. Every day. But not everyone was happy. Linda faced consequences, disciplinary meetings, warnings, and the wary eyes of management. The restaurant owners were under pressure to maintain their image. The villain of the story was no longer just a staff member. She was a symbol of what many wanted to leave behind. Miguel watched as the restaurant tried to balance damage control with genuine change. One evening, as the dinner crowd settled, a security guard approached Miguel. Hey, I wanted to say thanks. You helped someone when no one else would. Miguel smiled. Sometimes, it's the little things. The guard nodded, then lowered his voice. There's talk upstairs about promoting you. You might get a raise. Miguel's heart lifted. A small victory. Meanwhile, Keanu was quietly making his own moves. He reached out to Miguel through a private message. Your kindness won't be forgotten. Keep it alive. Miguel replied instantly. You showed me what true grace looks like. The connection between them was simple, but profound, a bond forged in respect and shared values. As the story went viral, it sparked conversations beyond the restaurant. Talk shows discussed it. Community groups held meetings about kindness, and judgment schools even brought it up to teach children about empathy. Miguel found himself invited to speak at local events. He shared the story, hoping to inspire others to stand up for what's right. One night, after a long day, Miguel sat quietly on a park bench, reflecting. A little girl approached, clutching a drawing. Here, she said shyly. It's you, and the nice man who stayed calm. Miguel smiled, taking the picture, a simple crayon sketch, with big hearts and smiling faces. Thank you, he said softly. As he looked up at the stars, Miguel thought about the power of a single moment. How a small act of kindness could ripple outward, changing lives in ways no one expected. Back at the restaurant, Linda's fate was uncertain. She had apologized, but trust took time to rebuild. Yet, the change was undeniable. The atmosphere was warmer. The staff treated each other with more respect. Customers noticed, and slowly, the restaurant's reputation began to heal. Keanu's presence, though quiet, had left a lasting mark. Miguel knew the journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, but for the first time, he felt hopeful. Because the story wasn't just about a man kicked out of a restaurant, it was about kindness, courage, and the possibility of change. And in that truth, Miguel found his purpose. ****. The days that followed the viral story brought unexpected changes, not just to the restaurant, but to Miguel's life. It began with a simple knock on his apartment door. Miguel opened it to find a young woman holding an envelope. Hi, I'm from a local charity, she said, smiling warmly. We heard about your courage and kindness. We want to help you. Miguel blinked, surprised. Help me? How? She handed him the envelope. Inside was an invitation to a community leadership program, free of charge, along with a small stipend to cover travel costs. This program will help you develop skills to inspire others, she explained. You deserve this? Miguel's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever offered him anything like this before. Thank you, he said softly. I want to keep making a difference. That same day, a call came from an unexpected place. Restaurant owner himself, Miguel. The voice on the phone was serious, but kind. We want to apologize for how things were handled. More than that, we want to offer you a promotion. Miguel hesitated, surprised by the offer. You've shown what true leadership looks like, the owner continued. We'd like you to help train our staff in kindness and respect. Miguel smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. I'd be honored, but the surprises didn't end there. Keanu Reeves, ever humble and quiet, reached out again. This time, with a personal invitation. Meet me at the community center tomorrow. The message read. The next day, Miguel arrived to find Keanu waiting. A gentle smile on his face. Thank you for standing by me, Keanu said simply. Miguel shook his head. You taught me what real kindness is. Keanu pulled a small envelope from his pocket. I want to help you continue this work. Inside was a check enough to support Miguel's family and start a community project focused on kindness and empathy. Miguel was speechless. This will change lives, he whispered. Keanu nodded. Kindness isn't about glory, it's about lifting others up. As they talked, Miguel felt a deep sense of purpose. This wasn't just a gift, it was a call to action. Word spread quickly. The community rallied around Miguel's new project. Volunteers signed up. Donations poured in. The restaurant began hosting workshops, led by Miguel, teaching staff and customers alike about empathy and respect. Meanwhile, Linda, who had once been cold and harsh, asked to speak with Miguel. "I want to apologize again," she said quietly. "You've shown me I was wrong. I want to change." Miguel looked at her carefully, then nodded. Change is possible for all of us. Linda joined the workshops, eager to learn and make amends. One evening, after a long day, Miguel stood outside the restaurant. A crowd gathered, clapping as he spoke about kindness. A woman in the crowd cried, "Thank you for reminding us what humanity means." Miguel smiled humbly. No one needs to be a hero. Just a person with a heart. Later, alone with Keanu, Miguel shared his gratitude. "I never imagined this would happen." Keanu smiled. "You had it in you all along. I just helped light the way." Before parting, Keanu shared one last piece of wisdom. "Remember, kindness doesn't need a name, it just needs a heart." Miguel watched him leave, feeling the truth of those words settle deep inside. That night, Miguel sat with his family, sharing the story, the journey from a simple act of courage to a community transformed. His little daughter hugged him tightly. "Daddy, you're my hero." Miguel smiled, tears in his eyes. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone trying to do good." The journey was far from over, but the path was clear. A life changed, not by fame or fortune, but by the unexpected gift of kindness. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting warm orange light across the quiet street where the restaurant stood, a place now transformed, not just by events, but by the hearts of those who had lived through them. Miguel sat on a bench nearby, cradling a small, worn notebook. Inside were notes and drawings from the community project he had started, a project born from a moment of courage and nurtured by countless acts of kindness. As he flipped through the pages, a familiar voice spoke gently beside him. "Do you remember when you first stood up for me?" Keanu Reeves asked, his tone soft and sincere. Miguel looked up, surprised and glad to see him. Keanu's presence was quiet but powerful, like a calm breeze that touched everything without force. "I do," Miguel replied. "It changed everything. Not just for me, but for everyone here." Keanu nodded, eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. Sometimes, the smallest actions carry the greatest meaning. Nearby, a group of children played, their laughter ringing like bells. One of them ran up to Miguel, holding a crumpled drawing. "Look, it's you and Mr. Keanu," she exclaimed, eyes bright with excitement. Miguel smiled warmly, accepting the picture. "Thank you, that means a lot." The child grinned, then ran back to her friends. Keanu watched the scene and said, "This is why I do what I do. To remind us all that kindness doesn't need a name, only a heart willing to give." Miguel closed his notebook and looked at Keanu. "You gave me a gift far beyond money or fame. You showed me what it means to be truly human." Keanu's smile deepened. "And you've taken that gift and multiplied it many times over." As the stars began to appear, the two men sat in companionable silence. Sharing a moment of peace, suddenly, a gentle voice interrupted. "Excuse me," said an elderly woman who had been listening nearby. "May I say something?" Miguel and Keanu turned toward her. She held a folded letter in her hands, her eyes misty. "I want to thank you both," she said. "This story, it touched my heart. It reminded me to be kinder, to judge less." She handed the letter to Miguel. "It's from my late husband," she explained softly. "He always believed in the power of kindness, even when life was hard. Your story feels like a message from him." Miguel opened the letter carefully. Inside were words of love, hope, and a call to treat everyone with compassion. Tears filled Miguel's eyes as he read aloud, "Kindness is the light in the darkest times. It does not ask for recognition, it asks only to be shared." Keanu nodded solemnly. "That's the truth we need to hold on to." The elderly woman smiled and took a seat nearby. Joining the quiet circle of community the night had gathered, Bad Miguel glanced around at the faces illuminated by children, the adults, strangers, turned friends. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey. Standing up, he addressed the small crowd. "Let this be a reminder. Kindness is not a weakness, it is strength, it is courage, it is what binds us together." He paused, then spoke the words he had learned from Keanu. Kindness doesn't need a name, it just needs a heart. The crowd nodded, some with tears, some with smiles. The message had landed. As the night grew deeper, Keanu rose quietly. "I must go," he said softly. "But remember this, every act of kindness sends ripples farther than we see." Miguel stood and shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for everything." Keanu gave a final gentle smile before disappearing into the shadows. As quietly as he had arrived, Miguel watched him go, feeling the weight and beauty of the moment. The restaurant, the city, the lives touched, they would never be the same, because kindness had been given a voice and a heart to carry it forward, and sometimes, the simplest lessons are the most powerful. A passerby nearby whispered as he walked past the bench, "That wasn't just a man, that was a lesson of life." Miguel looked up at the stars one last time before heading home, his heart full, his purpose clear. The story was over, but the journey of kindness had just begun. ****